Carter hadn't been home in 3 days. Technically, we still lived together. Technically, he still called me his boyfriend. But lately, it felt like I shared this house with shadows and echoes, old memories draped over furniture we both once picked out together. That morning, I woke with a low-grade fever and a pounding head. The sheets clung to my back with sweat, and my limbs felt like sandbags. I reached out blindly for the glass of water on the nightstand, but it was empty. Carter had said he'd refill it the night before. He never did. I texted him, still not feeling great, might stay in bed today. No reply. 2 hours later, I heard the chime of the security gate. A notification buzzed on my phone. Incoming visitor, Dr. Elias Monroe. Beneath it, a message from Carter. You sounded off this morning. Sent a private doc over. He's solid. Hope you feel better. He didn't ask how I was. Just outsourced his concern like it was another business transaction. I threw on a hoodie over my tank top, brushed my hair into something passable, and shuffled to the door. When I opened it, the man on the other side didn't look like any doctor I'd ever seen. He was maybe mid-30s, tall, composed, and dressed in a fitted navy button-up rolled at the sleeves. A stethoscope dangled from his pocket, but his eyes, deep, intelligent, a shade of green the first couldn't name, landed on me and didn't move. "Jordan?" he asked with a warm smile. "That's me," I mumbled, stepping aside. "Come in." Inside, I led him to the living room, the one Carter and I used to sit in for hours. Now it just held our silence. Elias placed his leather bag down and turned to me. "So, Carter said you've had some fever fatigue?" "Yeah, probably just a cold or something," I said, settling on the couch. I didn't think it was worth calling someone out, honestly. He offered a gentle nod. He said you've been run down for days. "Mind if I check your vitals?" I shrugged. Go for it. The checkup was efficient, professional, but with a softness I hadn't expected. When his fingers grazed my wrist to check my pulse, I felt more than just a beat under my skin. It was like being touched for the first time in weeks. He checked my temperature, listened to my breathing, asked a few pointed questions. Then he leaned back and studied me. Not like a doctor, but like someone reading between lines no one else could see. "You've got a low-grade fever and a bit of dehydration," he said finally. "But there's something else, isn't there?" I looked up, startled. "What do you mean?" His voice was gentle, but firm. "You just seem tired. Not physically. Emotionally." I hesitated. That was the part I'd been pretending wasn't there. "Long month," I said. "Carter's been traveling. Work's been heavy. I guess I'm just a little worn out." Elias didn't nod politely like most people would. He stayed quiet for a beat too long, like he was waiting for the truth to finish dressing itself. "You ever feel like you're disappearing in your own house?" I asked before I could stop myself. He didn't look surprised. "All the time," he replied softly. Our eyes locked. Something shifted. He reached for his bag, pulled out electrolyte sachets, and wrote down a few instructions. "Drink these twice a day. Rest. You'll feel better soon. And Jordan," his voice dipped lower, "if the tiredness stays, you should talk to someone about it." "You mean like therapy?" "I mean someone who listens." I gave a half laugh. "Well, you're the first in a while." He stood, slowly packing his things. "I'll leave my number in case you need anything." "Doctor-patient stuff?" He paused at the doorway, looking back, or otherwise. And then he left. I sat there on the couch long after the sound of his car faded. The house felt quieter than before, emptier, but in a way that made the silence feel honest. Carter hadn't messaged again. I glanced at the paper Elias had left on the coffee table. His handwriting was clean, precise. His number was underlined. Below it, a small note. "Take care of yourself. No one else can do it like you can." I held the note in my hand for a long time, wondering if the weight in my chest was guilt or something else. Not desire, not yet, but attention. Presence. I'd forgotten what it felt like to be seen. And that, more than anything, terrified me. I wasn't expecting him to show up again. It had been 3 days since Dr. Elias Monroe walked out of my house and left me sitting in my own silence. 3 days since someone looked at me like I was more than a shadow. Carter still hadn't returned, and the house felt as empty as ever. I recovered physically. No fever, no aches, but something inside me still felt unsettled, like my skin had been peeled back just enough to let the air sting. Then, just after 5 in the evening, the doorbell rang. I opened and there he was, Elias, dressed casually this time. A plain black tee, sleeves hugging his arms, jeans, and that same calm in his eyes. In his hand, he held a small paper bag and a book with a cracked leather spine. I was in the neighborhood, he said casually, though we both knew it wasn't that simple. Thought I'd bring by that book we talked about, the one I said might help you sleep. I didn't think you'd remember. I do, he said softly. May I come in? I stepped aside without a word. The living room looked the same as it had 3 days ago, but now it felt charged. I sat on the edge of the couch while he settled into the armchair across from me. He placed a bag on the coffee table, tea, biscuits, and something wrapped in brown wax paper. You didn't have to bring anything. I know. I wanted to. There was something about the way he said it that disarmed me. No expectation. No obligation. Just presence. He handed me the book. The body keeps the score. I turned it over in my hands. I've heard of it. It's not a cure-all, but it's honest. Sometimes that's more helpful than optimism. For a while, we sat in quiet conversation. Nothing dramatic. Just real. He asked about my work, my passions, my writing, things Carter hadn't asked about in months. Every time I answered, Elias listened like every word was worth something. Like I was worth something. Eventually, I found myself saying things I hadn't planned to. Things I hadn't even fully admitted to myself. I used to love this house, I murmured, fingers tracing the fabric of the cushion. Now it just feels like a waiting room, like I'm always waiting for him to come back and be who he was when we started. Elias didn't rush to speak. When he finally did, his voice was low, even. What if who you're waiting for doesn't exist anymore? That hit harder than I wanted to admit. He's not a bad person, I said quietly. I didn't say he was. Elias leaned forward, elbows on his knees. But sometimes good people still leave you lonely. The air between us thickened. I looked up and our eyes locked. There was no flirtation, no overt suggestion, but there was gravity. Like if I moved even slightly, something would fall. I shouldn't be talking to you like this. I whispered, my throat tight. I'm not judging, he said. I'm just here. And that was the hardest part. He was fully, painfully here, while Carter hadn't really been in months, even when his body was present. I got up and walked to the kitchen, needing space, needing air. Elias followed, slowly. He leaned against the counter as I poured water into glasses, my hands trembling just enough to make a small clink when the ice hit the glass. You don't even know me, I said without turning. I know what it looks like when someone's forgotten how to be touched. That stopped me. I turned around, the glass forgotten. He stepped closer, not invading, but closing the space like it had been asking him to. His voice was a whisper. When was the last time someone really saw you, Jordan? I didn't answer. I didn't need to. My silence was louder than any word I could have found. His hand reached out, not for my face, not for my body, but just to hold my hand. A simple gesture. Human. Honest. I didn't pull away. We stood like that for a long moment. Not as doctor and patient. Not as strangers. As two people quietly drowning in their own corners of loneliness. The sound of a phone vibrating broke the stillness. I looked down. It was Carter finally calling. I let it ring. Elias gently withdrew his hand. I should go, he said, voice tight but composed. You don't have to, I said, more quickly than I meant to. He paused. I want to, but not like this. Not while you're still unsure. There was integrity in his voice. Respect. It made me want him more. He reached the door, turned, and offered a final glance. You know how to reach me. And then he was gone. I leaned against the door frame, heart racing, breath shallow. That night, I didn't call Carter back. I didn't even open his message. Instead, I sat in bed, holding Elias' book in my lap, staring at the title and wondering when I had stopped believing I deserved more than just being tolerated. Days passed, then a week. Carter returned home, but nothing really changed. He dropped his bags in the hallway, gave me a quick kiss on the cheek, and muttered, "Thanks for holding the fort." That was it. No questions about how I'd been, how I'd felt, how the days alone had stretched and bent time like a rubber band threatening to snap. We went to bed in the same room, but he turned his back to me without even realizing he was doing it. And I, without realizing, stopped reaching for him altogether. The distance wasn't dramatic. It was quiet, subtle, like watching paint fade in real time. It was late Thursday when I found myself standing at the kitchen window, staring into the black yard. My phone was in my hand, thumb hovering over a contact I shouldn't have saved but did anyway. Elias Monroe. He hadn't messaged since he left. No nudges, no suggestions. Just space. Space I hadn't known I needed until it felt like oxygen. I pressed call before I had the chance to talk myself out of it. He answered on the second ring. "Jordan?" The sound of his voice felt like a door opening somewhere inside me. Sorry, I know it's late," I said quickly. "You probably weren't expecting." "I was hoping," he interrupted. There was a pause. It wasn't awkward, just thick with everything neither of us had dared say. "I still have your book," I whispered. "Then maybe I should come pick it up." That's how it began. 10 minutes later, his car pulled up. I met him at the door. He didn't ask to come in. I didn't have to offer. He stepped inside like he belonged there. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel like an intruder in my own life. We sat on the couch, not touching, not speaking, just existing in a space that finally felt alive. "You look like you haven't been sleeping," he said quietly. "I haven't," I replied. "Everything's quiet, but nothing's peaceful." Elias turned to face me fully, his voice lower now. "I don't want to make this harder for you. I know you're not free." I swallowed. Neither am I happy. That did it. The silence between us broke, gently, like a tide inching toward the shore. I leaned in first. I didn't plan to. I didn't even think. It felt instinctive, like breathing. His lips met mine in a kiss that wasn't desperate. It was deliberate, deep, measured, like he was memorizing the shape of sorrow I had become. His hand found the side of my face, holding me still, grounding me. The kiss lingered, then deepened. I felt his breath mix with mine, and something inside me collapsed and rebuilt all at once. There was no rush, no tearing clothes or hurried movements. Just two men peeling away months, years of silence, loneliness, and self-denial. He guided me gently to the couch cushions, our lips still joined, our hands now unafraid. His touch wasn't lustful, it was reverent, like I was something sacred that had been neglected too long. Every time Carter had touched me in the past few months felt like noise. This was music. Elias whispered things I barely registered, soft affirmations meant for the skin more than the ears. We moved as though we already knew each other's bodies, or maybe as if we were just learning them for the first time, with intention, with awe. Afterward, the room didn't feel tainted. It felt baptized. We lay there, quiet, both staring at the ceiling like it might give us answers. His hand rested on my chest, fingers tracing idle patterns across my skin. "You okay?" he asked. "I don't know," I replied honestly. "I don't know what this makes me." "You're human," he said simply, "and starved for connection." I didn't cry, but I wanted to. The guilt didn't crash in immediately. It floated in gently, like smoke curling to the edges of the moment. But even in the haze, I didn't regret it. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Elias sat up slowly, pulling his shirt back on. "This doesn't have to mean anything more than it did. Or it can. That's up to you." I nodded, eyes on the rug. "Carter and we've been over for a while. We just never said it out loud. And maybe now," he said, standing, "you can finally start saying things that matter." He kissed my forehead, soft and slow, then turned to leave. I watched him walk to the door. He paused, hand on the handle. "If you ever want to be truly seen again, you know where to find me." Then he was gone, and I sat alone, in the same living room where everything had once started. Carter's laughter, movie nights, long conversations, and hopeful dreams. But tonight, it wasn't his presence that lingered in the air. It was Elias, his scent on the cushion, his heat on my skin, his truth, echoing in the silence Carter had left behind. The book still sat on the coffee table, unread. But somehow, I already knew what the first chapter was trying to teach me, that the body keeps the score. And sometimes, the heart rewrites the ending. The next morning, the sunlight poured through the half-closed blinds, throwing fractured lines across the floor. Like everything in my life had been split into before and after. I sat on the edge of the bed, shirtless, still feeling Elias's touch on my skin like an echo I wasn't ready to silence. The house was quiet, but not empty. Carter was home. I could hear the shower running down the hall, steam hissing behind a closed door, the same door we used to open together. Now it felt like a barrier I didn't want to cross. I stared at my reflection in the bedroom mirror, hair tousled, lips slightly swollen from the night before, eyes hollow with truth. The weight in my chest wasn't just guilt. It was clarity, the kind that hurts more because you waited too long to see it. I picked up my phone. No messages from Elias. No follow-up. No pressure. But Carter had texted, heading to the office later. Want to grab dinner tonight. I stared at the words. They were polite. Empty, like trying to mend a dam with tape. For a brief moment, I considered replying. Sure. Let's talk. Let's try. But deep down, I knew I didn't want to. When Carter walked into the room, toweling off his hair, he gave me that distracted smile he always gave after long showers. Morning, he said, leaning over to peck my cheek. It didn't land. He paused, maybe noticing the stillness in me. Everything okay? I need to ask you something, I said. He dropped the towel on the chair and nodded. Shoot. When did we stop being us? The question hung in the air, naked and unafraid. Carter blinked, caught off guard. What do you mean? I mean, when did we stop talking? Laughing? Sleeping in the same rhythm? When did we become polite strangers who text instead of speak? He sat down across from me, suddenly serious. Is this about the doctor again? My breath caught. What? I saw the paper on the table. His number. The book. The follow-up call he made. Jordan, I'm not stupid. I swallowed hard. Then why didn't you ask? Carter leaned back, crossing his arms. Because I didn't want the answer. We sat in silence. This one didn't feel soft. It was sharp, raw. I didn't mean for anything to happen, I said, voice low. It just... I know, he interrupted. I looked at him. I knew we were falling apart, he admitted. I just didn't know how to stop it. So I worked more, stayed away, blamed timing, blamed stress, blamed everything except myself. A long pause. And now, I asked. He looked down at his hands. Now, I think maybe we've been done for a long time. We were just too scared to admit it. The honesty hit me like a wave. I should have felt angry, betrayed. But I didn't. I felt relief. I didn't want to hurt you, I said. I know, he replied, meeting my gaze. But maybe it's time we both stopped bleeding quietly. We didn't cry. There were no dramatics. Just mutual exhaustion from pretending. He stood, grabbed a hoodie, and moved to the door. I'll stay at my sister's for a few days, he said gently. We'll talk later, about the rest. I nodded. When the door closed behind him, the silence that followed wasn't heavy anymore. It was clean, like the first deep breath after holding one in for too long. I didn't call Elias. Not that day. Instead, I cleaned the house. I opened windows. I tossed out clothes I hadn't worn in years. I played old record we used to love. I sat with myself, not just in the stillness, but in the truth of who I'd become. By nightfall, the house felt different. Not haunted, not lonely, just mine again. Around 8 p.m., I took the book from the coffee table and sat by the window. As I turned the first page, my phone buzzed. Elias. No pressure. Just thinking of you tonight. I hope you're breathing easier. I smiled. Me, for the first time in a long while, I am. No promises, No plans. Just two men in different rooms, letting something real unfold in its own time. I close the book and lean back in chair. The body does keep the score. But sometimes the heart deserves a second draft.